I'm going to show you something that every golfer can do today to improve their swing, and that includes you. This is one of the lowest hanging fruits, if you will, as far as it comes to simple golf improvement. But we're human, we're golfers, we tend to overcomplicate things. The industry tends to overcomplicate things.
Allow your weight to shift to the inside of your right foot and keep the club face square and your left heel planted and the V between your thumb and forefinger pointed to your right shoulder and the club grip gently like a wounded bird and your left shoulder under your chin, allowing your hands to rotate through the impact area and maintaining a stable lower body position while finishing with your belt buckle facing the target with your rear elbow hinge.
So we really need to find some principles, some keys that we can repeat, that we can use to be consistent. And it starts with the foundation of a solid, repeatable, I'm going to say that word a lot, setup. Because it's not just about repetition, it's about enabling your body to move as freely as possible. And when you do that, you won't have to manipulate your swing anywhere near as much as you're most likely doing right now. There's a few keys that we need to be able to execute when it comes to a repeatable setup. It's stance width, it's the angle that we've got, it's the arm hang, and it's also the lie angle of our clubs. We have to adjust to those. And those variables might seem difficult to manage, but when you follow a couple of keys that I'm going to show you, you can repeat them much easier. You'll move better and you will hit the ball better. And the best thing is you can practice a lot of this at home today, right now. So there's going to be three ways that we can get down to the ball, okay? It's going to vary a little bit how far that is depending on the club that we have, but there's three ways that we can do it. One of them is going to be from bending from the knees, okay? That's how we're going to sort of address the ball, is bending from the knees. However, when this happens too much, we sort of see something like this where the swing can get very rounded and we get over the top. We also have an issue of stalling because the legs just aren't moving properly. We haven't got an athletic posture. You know, we wouldn't really do anything in life when we're sunk down like this, okay? The arms are sort of very close or they're a bit too far away, and it causes a lot of movement, unnecessary movement that we just don't need. And that's over exaggerating a little, but it's to emphasize it. And you don't need anywhere near as much knee bend as you think. And if you've got too much knee bend, it's probably because you're not doing the latter, which we'll see in a minute. The other way we're going to get down to the ball with the club, so we've got the club in our arms here. The other way we're going to do it is the most common way, is bending from the hips. So we bend from the hips here, sticking the rear end out and then flexing the knees. We see that description of how to get into a athletic posture, how to set up like Adam Scott or whatever it might be. Now the thing is, when we set up with these very rigid angles, we are locked into position here. Our body is not designed to move dynamically, either in rotation or forwards when we're locked in this position. And this has become the sort of common instruction in modern day golf really for a number of years. And that in particular is one of the reasons why I totally and utterly screwed my back up, because it was all about, locking into this position with the hips and the pelvis locked here and then trying to turn the body around that. And then it's like, you're not getting enough turn. You need to turn more. So you need more mobility. So you start working in the gym, working on all these mobility moves, trying to increase your range of motion. Or if you don't do that, your swing can end up looking very much like choppy like this, or you're going to do one of the big common faults. If you're rigid here, what it'll do, because it's like an overcompensation, you'll stand up through the ball and have that kind of early extension and not make that good contact. And that all stems from having a rigid, locked position. We can't rotate, we can't move from this position. There is a third way, a better way, an easier way. We want to be able to lower ourselves from the thoracic spine here. Being able to lower ourselves there has a number of benefits, and I'm not going to be able to cover them all, but if you look at golfers of days gone by, you'll see that Jack Nicklaus, Ben Hogan, Arnold Palmer, many others before, even Nick Faldo, before we started getting into this millennium and it started to get a lot more rigid. Now, you might say, why does this work for pros? They are all standing like this. Well, they're the exception. They have the ability to be mobile. They have the ability to work on their strength and fitness. They have the ability to move as they need to. It doesn't mean that it's optimal, and it's certainly not optimal for a vast majority of you, like probably 90%. And at the end of the day, we want this to be easier on the body, to be able to produce more effortless, consistent golf swings. So what we want to do, we want to lower ourselves from the thoracic spine a little bit here. And you can just sort of do a little test. We're just going to stand pretty neutral with our lower body, a little bit of flex. And what I'm going to try and do is just lower, keeping my hips in place. I'm just going to lower down from my upper back. All right. And one of the main benefits here, as I showed you with the backside sticking out and that rigid, we can't make a good turn. We get stuck and then we have to overcompensate. When we have a natural sort of flexion here, what can happen is it's going to be a lot easier as we go back to add that little bit of extension. We've got, I'm exaggerating, but we've got that room to extend. And that is something that's very natural. If you were to just throw a ball, you wouldn't stay here and throw it that way. You would, you would throw the ball like this. You would get up high, you would create some extension. But you can only do that if you have room to do it, literally, from your upper spine. Another aspect that is important when it comes to a repeatable setup is the distance that we have our arms from ourselves in relation to the ball. And that's where, different lie angle is going to affect us. That when we start to set our, perfect setup that's more natural, the arms are going to hang in a different position than if they were, if we were bending from the knees too much. Okay. Or what can happen is if we bend from the knees, they often sort of go out a little bit too far that way because we're trying to reach and kind of create room, if you will. Likewise, if we do the over-exaggeration of the typical setup that you're being told to do with the sharp angles and, I keep picking on Adam Scott. But the thing is, Adam Scott has unbelievable mobility. Like, that's just naturally him. He doesn't need to turn up, rotate his hips that much to be able to get an exceptionally big rotation and range of motion. Most of us can't, I can't do what he can either. So we have to allow for our own physical limitations and just be realistic. If we have, a bit of lordosis here, sticking that butt out and very rigid, what it's going to do is cause those arms to be a little bit too close to us here, which is going to cause a bit too much of a steep swing and a compensation, trying to make room or coming across the top or early extending because we're out of place here. And the more we have variables, the more inconsistent you're going to be. But if we have a neutral position where we're bending from that thoracic spine and we're a bit more neutral in the pelvis here, the arms are going to hang a lot more naturally. And then they're going to be in more or less the same position. Yes, they're going to change for different lengths of clubs a little bit, but it's going to be in the optimal position, the neutral position, to be able to make, the backswing and the turns and the through swings that we want. There's other benefits to this as well, but doing it, you'll start to notice you have a more free-flowing swing on the backswing and the through swing. But I'm going to give you a really neat drill that you can do at home right now against a wall that's going to help you calibrate it. Find yourself a wall. Now, obviously here in the golf studio, there's a couple of weird angles. So just find a regular straight wall that you can use. If it's got a skirting board, that's great. Or what do you call it? Baseboard, you Americans. If it doesn't, you want to sort of look at maybe a club length difference or gap from the wall to your heel, approximately there. But for the ultimate test, we're trying to get the heels as close to the wall as possible. And we don't need a club to begin with, but what I'm showing you is that if we put our heels right against the wall here, and I'm trying to sort of lower down to even touch my knees, okay? If I try and touch my knees, I can sort of do it by bending my knees a little bit, but I still have to sort of tilt over at the thoracic spine, okay? That's sort of cheating, but that, as we've talked about, is not going to be very optimal for a golf swing. Likewise, the most popular way of getting down to the ball is to hinge at the waist, to sort of push the hips back and tilt forward, okay? If I do that to try and touch my knees, what's going to happen is I'm going to sort of be pushed off and fall over. Again, all of this is about calibration, about balancing a repetition that we can just stick and hit every time to give us the power and consistency that we want. So we're going to go with option number 3, which is to allow ourselves to bend from the thoracic area. But what we're going to do, and why the drill is so important, is going to overemphasize that sensation for us. But we're going to try and keep our pelvis, our backside, our lower back on the wall kind of as much as possible, all right? What we're going to do is now flex from the thoracic area and touch my knees, but I'm trying to maintain touch. As soon as it comes away, right, that's about there. I'm touching my knees. And that, even though it's a little bit exaggerated, is much nearer the optimal setup position for nearly every single golf swing. You're going to move better, you're going to hit it better from here. And every time that you practice this at home, pushing against the back against the wall, just lowering yourself from the spine, lowering down to here. And you can adjust your stance width a little bit to replicate your actual setup, okay? But you're going to keep rehearsing this movement, keeping your lower back and thoracic spine down nice and slowly. And what you can try and do then is hold a club. I haven't quite got enough room here, but you're going to hold a club up and you're going to sort of lower yourself down, okay, until you touch the floor with the club. The more you do this, the better it's going to be. Every day, just find a wall, just spend a couple of minutes working on this drill to find your primary optimal balance point with a neutral pelvis. Because when you do this, your swing will improve and you'll start to hit that setup position every time. You'll be balanced, you'll be more dynamic, and when we add on a couple of other elements, which we'll get to in some other videos, you're going to be in a really good spot. Trust me, you can use that daily, and even without hitting any shots, you'll start to calibrate yourself, your setup. When you approach shots, you'll have a more neutral, natural position that you hit every time. There's going to be more neutral here, more natural, and that nice lowering to be able to get the backswing and the wind up you want and the through swing. It's going to make the whole thing a lot easier. So use that wall drill, start calibrating yourself and see a better swing. Now, if you want to improve another facet of your game, helping you get a little bit more rotation, check out this lesson. See you next time.